Turn-based RPGs were some of my favorite games growing up as a kid. Chrono Trigger, Pokemon Blue, Yellow, Final Fantasy VII, just to name a few, you know. My childhood was filled with hours of insane stories and fun battle mechanics to learn so I can try to get the most broken numbers out of my characters. And the options for those types of games were plentiful when I was younger during the SNES and PS1 era of games, but the genre virtually exploded when the PS2 generation came around. While plenty of RPGs experimented with new types of battle systems, games like Final Fantasy X and Dragon Quest VIII that kept traditional turn-based battles are usually hailed as some of the best RPGs from that era. Now you fast forward to now, the gaming landscape is virtually unrecognizable from the 90s and early 2000s, with many games using RPG elements in other genres. Games that were strictly turn-based RPGs were numerous in the past, but now the options seem a little bit more limited in scope. In this video, I want to point out a few of my favorite turn-based RPGs from the past few years and discuss how they've improved upon the blueprint left by their predecessors. You take on the role of the Solstice warriors Verlier and Zale as they journey with their warrior chef friend Garl on an adventure that spans the world in this beautiful 16-bit art style game. If you've played Chrono Trigger or the Mario RPG games, you'll feel right at home with this indie love letter to the SNES era 16-bit games. Battles take place directly on the field you are running around in, instead of sending you to some random battle dimension to do the fight. In addition, the combat allows timed button presses on attacks for extra damage and on defense when enemies attack you to lessen the damage you receive. During exploration, you can also attack enemies from afar to try to get the drop on them from an early advantage in battle. The music for this game is top-notch, with 2 people taking on composing roles. While the majority of the music was done by Eric W. Brown, Sea of Stars was also able to get the legendary Yasunori Mitsuda to contribute 12 tracks to the soundtrack as well. And you might recognize Mitsuda's work from classic games like Chrono Trigger, Xenogears, and the Shadow Heart series. The normal battle theme is one of the best tracks I've ever heard in a game, so much so that it had me actively seeking out more fights just so I could hear the song more often. Changing the time of day is a core mechanic in this game, so a lot of the music has a day and a night version of the same song, depending on whether the sun or the moon is out. Without spoiling too much, some of the best songs also get 2 additional versions in the late game, rounding out one of the best video game soundtracks I've heard in a long time. The story of Sea of Stars is great, but I will admit that it doesn't quite leave the same impression as the properties that it clearly draws inspiration from. There are some fantastic emotional moments, and the character development of its colorful cast is great, but I find myself being more attached to the characters and their quirks than I am to the story that unfolds over its 25 to 30 hour gameplay. As of recording this video, they recently released a free DLC that adds around 8 hours of content, but I haven't really played that one yet. Sea of Stars is one of the best tributes to the games of old in the modern era that I have played. It does very little to innovate the genre I loved as a kid, but it proves that classic turn-based RPGs with time-tested mechanics absolutely have a place in the current gaming landscape. Couple that with an absolutely incredible soundtrack and you have what was easily my 2023 Game of the Year. Every year, the paintress decreases the number on her monolith by 1. Anyone who is the same age of that number succumbs to the Gamage. Think Thanos snap, but with rose petals instead of dust. Each year when this happens, the town of Lumiere sends out an expedition to find and defeat the paintress in a futile attempt to bring an end to the Gamage once and for all. The exploration out in the field and on the world map is your standard affair, but the battle system of this game is simply one of the best I have ever played. It takes cues from games like Paper Mario, Mario RPG, and even Sea of Stars in that you can do time button prompts for extra damage on attacks. There's also an option to delay virtually any incoming enemy attack during battle, but there's also one more special option when fighting: parrying. This is one of the most satisfying things of all time. The music, gameplay, and the world all slow down to accentuate and celebrate your parry before throwing you back into real time for a devastating counterattack. The downside of parrying is that you must parry every attack in order to get your counterattack, and some bosses later in the game will have upwards of 7 hits that you have to master the timing for. If you put in the time to perfect the parrying system of this game, you will not be disappointed. You also find accessories with stat buffs out and around the world, and you can acquire the stat buffs from those accessories, allowing you to create a fusion of some insanely overpowered abilities. I apologize if I butcher any names or pronunciations during this. The composer of this game, Lorient Testard, was creating music for SoundCloud when he was discovered to do the soundtrack for this game. The story has a melancholic, almost defeated tone, and Testar nails this vibe perfectly. The narrative and the music play off each other in a beautiful harmony that brings you to tears in some moments and rouses the heart for an epic battle the next. One of my favorite parts about this game is how naturally and organically the story unfolds. It hooks you in early on with a lot of questions you need answered. Why is everyone disintegrating? Who is doing this? How can we possibly beat this? It handles exposition succinctly by only giving us what we need to know about something when we see it for the first time, and leaves the rest of the lore up to us to find. Like I mentioned earlier, the music also perfectly works in tandem with the high and low emotional beats. The overall tone leads the player to believe the mission is going to be a failure, and the game's characters and music sell you on that feeling that success is almost out of reach. As you continue your adventure and explore the world, building up small successes, you and the characters see a glimmer of hope, and the roller coaster the story takes you on is something you absolutely need to experience. After hearing me gush about this game for so long, you might be surprised to hear that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is technically considered an indie game, and it's the first game from developer Sandfall Interactive. This game proves great experiences don't always come from the big AAA gaming studios, and that a dedicated team with a clear vision of what they want to accomplish can create something truly inspiring. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is simply one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had the privilege of enjoying. A group of high school students and others in Tokyo gain the powers of a persona, and they use their powers to change the hearts of wicked people throughout the city. Your power becomes the bonds and friendships you forge with characters in your party and NPCs around the city. As you influence the wicked at the tops of their organizations to confess to their sins and wrongdoings, you start to see that it leads to a positive impact on the world around you. The Persona series is a weird hodgepodge of other games all thrown into one, and it's so strange how well it works at pulling off a fun and satisfying gameplay experience. Persona games, at least the ones since the PS2 era, are a mix of dungeon crawling, visual novels, anime, dating simulators, and a battle system that has you collecting monsters with strengths and weaknesses similar to the Pokemon series. You get a little bit of everything with the Persona games, but it can sometimes not always be the greatest thing. Let's say you have about 30 minutes to play a game on any given day, and you boot up Persona 5. It could very well be the case that your entire time set aside for gaming that day can be eaten up by a single cutscene that maybe has you make one or two dialogue choices, and those choices don't really feel like they would change the narrative at all. Don't get me wrong though, when Persona 5 hits on all cylinders, it is a fantastic game and you absolutely need to try it out for yourself. I'm not the biggest fan of jazz music, so when I say that I absolutely love the jazz-inspired soundtrack of Persona 5, you know that it must be something special. The music is ridiculously infectious and perfectly blends with the slick style of the game. As you walk around Tokyo deciding what you want to do and who to spend your time with, the soundtrack effortlessly sells you on the feeling of loneliness and then picks back up into a perky melody once you begin spending time with somebody. It's an apt metaphor to feeling alone in a big city. Don't be surprised if you find yourself singing along to some of the battle tracks in this game. Like every game in the Persona series, this game is packed to the brim with content, with casual playthroughs of just the story alone and no additional side content, taking over 100 hours of gameplay. Most of the story unfolds through conversations you have with people throughout the city, so you get a full picture of the people you choose to spend your time with, making each playthrough different based on which characters you want to pursue, both as friends and as romantic interests. Full disclosure, I have only ever completed the original version of the game. I have not finished the updated Royal version of the game, but the experience so far only adds to the already impressive package of the original. Much like Sea of Stars, this game does not do a whole lot to innovate the turn-based RPG genre. If you were to put on a battle from Final Fantasy X and then immediately play a battle from Persona 5, they would feel surprisingly similar. I think the true star of the show with this game is its characters and the story that slowly unfolds over the course of its long runtime. I was very excited to see a couple of spin-offs of this game starring the same cast because I grew to truly care for these characters. Every time I see them, it's like reuniting with your group of friends that you haven't spent time with in a few years. It might be weird to hear me talk about a game that is almost 10 years old at this point, but I have yet to finish Metaphor ReFantazio, the latest Atlas-style RPG. So far in that game, everything I have to say about Persona 5 can be repeated again for Metaphor, except for the change in the musical cues. And that's the beauty of this series, I guess, or these games from Atlus. Regardless of whether you do Persona, Soul Hackers 2, or Metaphor ReFantazio, you're in for a consistent and enjoyable journey. I've really only begun to scratch the surface of current turn-based RPG offerings available to us. Games like Chained Echoes or the recent Yakuza Like a Dragon games also do a lot to keep the genre alive and well. Considering that 2 of the games I've discussed are indie games, means that consumers and developers alike are still eager to use this platform as a way to tell their stories. I really look forward to seeing the awesome stories and the fantastic experiences awaiting me as we go further to the next generation of games. There, I stole it. I stole it, Doctor. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Alright, I got it.